Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Align's Daily Dose of Advice, our way of bringing you valuable insights and thought leadership from business experts from around the world on various topics that we hope will help you and your business. As always, I'm Eugene Turk, the Vice President of Business Development at Align. You can learn more about Align at aligntoday.com. My guest today is Hugh Gyton. Hugh is the founder of Hugh Gyton and Associates in Sydney, Australia. Hugh has more than 35 years of business experience in the UK, Australia, and Asia. And for nearly the past 20 years, he's been facilitating and coaching company leaders and teams. He is the author of The Art of Conversation, a certified scaling up business coach, and a certified public speaker. Hugh, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Eugene. Pleasure to be here, and lovely to see we're both enjoying wonderful weather, even though we're at quite different times of the day.
Completely on opposite sides of the world.
Yeah.
Hugh, I know that one of your particular areas of expertise is a company's people and the resulting culture that those people create in a workplace. So I was hoping to speak to you about some issues related to employees, remote working, and how companies can maintain that culture while we are all sort of apart at this time. So first, what are some of your suggestions on ways that companies can help their employees deal with time management issues while working from home and now dealing with additional issues like homeschooling and children running around and sort of those additional challenges that come from this experience?
Yeah, great question. And boy, am I grateful that I'm only dealing with a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old who pretty much don't want to spend too much time with dad anyway. Um, I really, feel for those of you out there who are working from home and maybe never have worked from home before and dealing with young children. It is very challenging. And even before it was as challenging as this, I've been working from home for most of my kids' lives. And to give you just a little story before I directly answer your question, Eugene. I remember in my early days of working from home, I had a home office, which not all of you will have even that luxury right now, and that makes it even harder. But I had a home office, and my kids would come home from school, and I could hear them scamper up the stairs, and they'd rush into my office wanting to see dad, and I'd be there busily typing away an email or whatever, and I'd say, "Hi, kids," and carry on typing. And they'd be really annoying, and they'd be reaching over for pens and pencils, and it took me several days, possibly weeks, because I am traditionally a very slow learner, before I realized that all I had to do was, when they scampered into my office, was just swivel my chair, open my arms and say, "Hi, darling," and then they'd run off. That's all they wanted. And I'd be left thinking, "Oh, I need more, I need more."
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things we as leaders and as parents at home working is empathy for ourselves and empathy for each other, and try and really get present as to what it is that's needed for the individual at any particular time. From a more business perspective, I think what we absolutely really need to be focused on right now is clarity. This thing Covey said, which was so good, the main thing is to keep the main thing. You cannot expect your productivity right now if you're working from home. I mean, here, as we were sharing before the conversation started, Eugene, because your wife works from the home office and has done before this crisis, your office is the garden.
Yes.
And lovely vista, but maybe not perfect for productivity at all times. So we're going to have to adjust and recognize that our productivity isn't always going to be what it was. So be really clear about what is the main thing I need to achieve today or this week or this month. And around that, I got into this whole sort of adult corporate education space as a licensee with an organization called Leadership Management International, or as they were known in Australia, Leadership Management Australia. And they had a fantastic program called Effective Personal Productivity. And the point they made in that program was, it's not actually about time management at home, it's about productivity. It's about being really, really clear as to what you've got to get done. Not spend, because we all spend ridiculous amounts of time on the keyboard in emails and whatever. And being virtual right now, I'm sure most of us spending way too much time in front of these screens. So a very practical tool that we used to use is called high payoff activities. And it's this idea of be really, really clear. What are the activities? Not what your job description is, but what are the activities that I really have to do that are high payoff? and order them in priority and allocate a certain amount of time to them, and then really get disciplined about doing the most important stuff first. I think that's the hard thing for a lot of us, is we tend to come and do the easy stuff, check our emails.
Yeah.
Whereas I find I have a much more productive day. The first thing I do is maybe it's the one phone call I've been resisting making because, you know, I'm just afraid of how that phone call is going to go. But if I then have it, it normally 9 times out of 10 goes much better than I was worrying about anyway. But I've got the important high payoff stuff out of the way before all the disruptions start happening. And I think also with the home schooling and homework, and particularly for some of you recognize, you know, your physical environment is really changed. You might have 3 of you working. I've been talking to some clients where, you know, that pretty much the whole family's at the dinner table with their laptops.
Yeah.
The kids are doing their homeschooling stuff, and mum and dad are trying to do their corporate work stuff. That's really challenging. And so you may need to sort of create some rules in the family as to allocating times as to who's got the table, and you go off and do other things. So we could go on about that all day, but those are some quick ideas. And if you're interested in the high payoff activities, I've got a little worksheet. You can you know, contact me and I'll happily flick you a copy of that if you think something like that's useful.
That's very generous. Thank you. Moving on, I know that obviously, you know, before all of this, many of us went to the office, and when we left the office, we could disconnect from that work, or at least as best as possible, we could disconnect when we got home. Sort of what advice are you giving your coaching clients and their employees to help them sort of maintain a work-life balance while now our work and our life really are one and the same?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how we've all talked about this balance, and it depends what sort of personality you are. It's not necessarily about balance. I mean, what I've observed in myself, for example, having now worked from home for about 19 years, I think it is pretty much the whole of my kids' life, so it must be 19 years. I'm not necessarily that good at recognizing, you know, what days are work days and what days aren't. I'll allow personal staff to get involved in both, and I've just worked out my own rhythm around that.
Yeah.
But I do think you still need some of the disciplines which traditionally, even going from a corporate office back home, you know, coming home from, you've been operating all day as a senior executive, you've got a title that suggests you should be listened to, and you've got authority, and you come home into the family where you're just mum or dad, and children don't necessarily have they don't understand the C-suite title maybe quite so well.
Correct.
You know, making that transition, even in the pre-virus home sort of based days, was still a challenge. And I used to talk to my clients a lot about, have you created a third place? Is there somewhere you can transition between leaving corporate Hugh and stepping into dad Hugh? And physically, in the old days, it could be, I mean, I had clients who would park just around the corner from their house and just play a couple of tracks of classical music to transition their headspace. I had clients who, when they first got home, would say to the kids, just give me 10, I'm going to go upstairs, I'm going to get out of my suit, I'm going to have a shower, get into some casual clothes, and then I'm down to play. And so they created rituals. And I think you have to try and find, how do we do that maybe in a more condensed way? So for example, I work from home now, I don't have kids running around, but I still do the transition. So once I've decided, right, that's it, I'm not working anymore, I shut down the computer, I close the laptop, I switch off all the lights. I have the luxury of a dedicated room for working in. I leave that room and I shut that door. And that's my, you know, physicality of transitioning. That's my third space. The other thing I found, I spent nearly 18 months working in Southeast Asia as Chief Operating Officer for the master franchise of Southeast Asia for the Anytime Fitness 24-hour gym chain. One of the most demanding things I've ever done in my life. Loved it, but very, very demanding. I was going up to Asia. My family were living in Sydney. I was going up to Asia for 3 weeks of every month, coming home for a week.
Yeah.
I was working 14, 15 hours a day, 16 hours sometimes, 7 days a week. I found the only way I could sort of handle that process, where work almost became totally absorbing, was to create rituals. And my morning ritual was the same every day, which was I meditated, I exercised, and I took a vitamin B Berocca. I don't know which one of those was doing the good stuff, but I never missed a beat in the whole of the time. I was the oldest person on the team. My energy levels were always really good. I never took a day off sick. I was mentally in the game. And so I've maintained that now. Before you and I got together this morning, I've already meditated. I haven't done my exercise yet, but I will. I've got less discipline. I used to do a thing called the 7-minute circuit, which was great.
Hmm.
You could do it anywhere, you could do it really quickly. And I was often living in hotels and small spaces, and it was just perfect. I didn't have to go out.
Yep.
So, that's it. And the final thing I'd say about this whole environment is just be kind to yourself. This is really hard stuff, and just allow yourself the opportunity to be kind to yourself and recognize you can't expect to be as efficient and as effective as you are in a dedicated office working space.
Great advice. Speaking of company culture, I know
Yeah.
that many companies work really hard to develop their company culture. And so while large parts of their employees are remote, what are some ways that companies can sort of help those employees maintain that culture that they've worked so hard to develop?
Well, I guess, coming from somebody who's spent the last 20 years particularly focused in this area, and also, through the whole of my corporate life, I'm all about people by people first. It's all about communication. I've trademarked selling is just a conversation. I've written a book called The Art of Conversation. For me, everything comes down to how your people operate. So for me, I think maintaining a company culture is, are you having enough communication with your staff, with your suppliers, with your customers? In this current environment, we've just got to lift. I talk in selling is just a conversation. I talk about Q squared. You can increase sales very easily by the quantity of conversations you have and the quality of conversations you have.
Hmm.
And I think right now is a time for Q squared. So if you're already a company that's bought into the scaling up communication rhythms and you're doing daily huddles, the recommendation I was had is most probably you need to be having 2 daily huddles.
Right.
And this is, I'm sure you guys are in alignment with that. Align itself, fantastic tool for managing that sort of rhythm of huddling, and you guys have been very generous with the way you're offering that for free for people, and I would certainly recommend people to go and have a look at that. I think the other thing is also what I'm showing, I'm observing in some of my clients who are doing this particularly well is they've also upped the all hands communication, so they're using Zoom or whatever, and actually once a week now talking to everybody, keeping everybody up to date with what's really going on and how are we dealing with this and what we need to all be focused on, etc., etc. I think that's great. I think it's also a really critical time for us to be focused on what our core purpose and core values are,
Hmm.
and making sure how do we bring those to our team? How are we as a leadership team demonstrating that virtually in the way that we're dealing with everybody? I think the other bit is remember as well, have some fun along the way. So I've got some clients that are doing a great job of some virtual socializing. And I don't know, and excuse the language for a moment, I don't know if this is something that the Americans would use the same thing, but in England and in Australia, a phrase I've used a lot is Poets' Day, which is Friday afternoon is Poets' Day, and here's where, excuse the language, it's piss off early, tomorrow's Saturday.
Oh.
And some of my clients are doing that virtually, so they're all tools down, 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, let's all get on a Zoom call, and let's just chill. Let's not necessarily talk about what the priorities are or anything. Let's just catch up and have a beer together and cheers each other. And I think, doing those sort of things, maintaining the social element as well as the professional element, I think is really important. And particularly, as a leader, checking in with your people and just making sure, are they okay? We have a very good organization here called Are You OK? About mental health, because mental health is a real challenge across the world, in the first world particularly. And Australia's got its fair share of issues around that. So, I think we do need to be checking in with each other and making sure you're coping okay, because depending on the environment, I mean, I'm really ridiculously spoiled. I'm staying at my partner's house and I've got water views out of this window,
Yeah.
you've got a nice garden, trees, lawn under your toes and all the rest of it. You can connect with nature and you can get out, etc. Some people, are in very cramped units with kids, and I've seen awful photos of poor people trying to work, with a toddler on their lap and another toddler playing beside them, and they're pretending, I'm at the computer working. And so I think, you really do have to keep an eye on each other and help wherever you can, even though it is just virtual.
I will tell you that just before you and I started this recording session, the Align team was having our weekly Thursday happy hour via Zoom. So what we have done is we've started doing a weekly huddle. And that weekly huddle is a non-business conversation. It is a weekly huddle where everyone either grabs a drink or water or whatever the case might be, and we just hop on and we talk about, hey, how are you feeling? What are you watching on television when you have a little bit of free time? Whatever the conversation might be. So we are doing exactly what you just talked about.
Okay.
Another question. I know I'm now starting to see some articles about the wealth of talent that's out there, sort of as a result of, obviously there are some people that are being laid off and
Yeah.
people that are being furloughed, companies that are struggling with that. Um, how can a company go out and find and bring in new people and onboard new talent right now when we are all sort of in a stay-at-home environment? Is that possible?
Um, I think a lot of, I mean, I think as a general comment, I think for a lot of companies, this time is proving to be a fantastic opportunity to work out some things in terms of we've got into some poor habits of behavior, whether it's around process or people, in the way we've been doing business, because things weren't quite as stressful. You know, business, you know, we have challenges all the time. This particular challenge is just ridiculously amplified.
Right.
But because of that amplification, I think it is an opportunity where we can start to see what in the past wasn't so obvious is now really obvious. So one of the things around the talent thing that I think you most probably are starting to see for yourself is certainly, and in scaling up, we're big fans of Brad Smart and his whole top grading philosophy. And if you go to his website, tons and tons of useful, free and available resources there. But he talks about A players and C players, you know, this idea that, you know, in an ideal world, wouldn't you want all your players to be A players? And in simple definition, that means they're highly productive and they're living your core values really, really well. So for one thing, for you to know, have I got A players, you've got to know what your core values are, and you've got to know what sort of attitudes and behaviors do we expect so that we know somebody's living that. I would anticipate for the most companies right now, they are very quickly and clearly seeing who their A and C players are just because of how they're responding in the current climate. I'm a great one about, you know, I've had some challenges through my life, some really tough challenges. And what that's taught me is life is not about what happens to you, it's about what you choose to do about what happens to you. It's how
Mm,
you respond. Now, here we are as leaders of companies with, you know, 10, hundreds, thousands of people. You will be seeing different ways that people are responding. And your A players are going to be people who are just managing themselves so well that they're responding, they're looking after themselves, they're looking after the people around them, they're coping with the challenges of this new environment. C players potentially aren't able to cope with that as well. So one thing I'd say this opportunity is you most probably are starting to get much clearer about who are the people and what does an A player look like for our company, which
mhm.
is a great place to start before going out to try and recruit somebody. Be really clear about what it is you want to recruit. And I've always believed I you know, recruit for attitudes before skills. I remember a story when I first came over to Australia. I was sent to Australia to launch a software company for my then UK employer. And one of the early programs I did, well, not that early, I think I was about 2 years into the project, actually, we were growing and recruiting, we were recruiting graduates. And the way I had been employed by this company, which I ended up working with for 14 years, they're a great company, they recruited me as a graduate. And I reflected on how they did that. And I sort of mirrored a lot of what they did. Part of that was I put on a day where I got the short list of candidates in, about 20 graduates came in, and we spent the whole day with them. And we basically spent half the day making sure they absolutely wanted to join us, that they did not want to hear that they weren't going to join. I wanted to just pump them up that this is a fantastic place to work. And then the other half of the day was me making sure, do I know which ones I want to bring in on the team? And I found it fascinating how one or two of the graduates said, what are you doing spending the whole day with us? You're the managing director of this place. How can you? And I said, do you understand? This is possibly the most important day of my year. If I get this right and identify the 2 or 3 absolutely fantastic graduates who are going to just take off when they come into this place, my job suddenly gets really, really easy. If I unfortunately recruit some people that aren't particularly good, I'm going to be managing those. You know, I've got a lot of work to do. And sure enough, I recruited some great graduates. Within weeks, those graduates straight out of university, the customers were demanding, can I have the graduate? And it really woke up the established consultants who got a little bit complacent, that people love the attitude, the positiveness, even though they didn't have the experience and necessarily as much knowledge, just the enthusiasm, the energy, the willingness to help that they brought into the consulting environment made them perceived as more valuable than a 10-year veteran. And so I'm a great believer, recruit for attitudes and behaviors before technical stuff. You can teach the technical stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I've really answered your question there, but I think, the other thing, of course, is in terms, just once again, come back to communication, use your network, use LinkedIn, but be clear what you want and what you need. And we've got various tools. Functional accountability chart is the first one that comes to mind as you ask that question. Do you even know what are the critical roles you need to drive your business out of this current situation, and then recruit to that?
Hugh, like I said to you at the beginning, there's no second takes. I don't know if you saw my son walk past
I,
me. He's
did you notice the
currently
casual way I ignored it?
he's currently playing soccer. I have to ask you, Ezra, not right now, if please. Give me 10 minutes and you and I will go for a run. All right? No soccer right now. Thank you, dear. All right, Hugh, last question.
Yeah.
And the question that I ask everyone who comes on the Daily Dose of Advice: what is the number one piece of advice that you're giving your coaching clients right now?
I don't think it's going to be any surprise from the conversation we've already had, and I hope I'm not just sounding like a stuck record. But for me, people buy people first, and they buy from people they trust and respect. Whether they're buying you as a leader or as a colleague, or whether they're buying from you as a provider of products and services. So it's about communication. Have more of it. Have high quality. And in the current environment, I think that's about being in a mindset of collaborating and serving. Just changing the emphasis a little bit, just to recognize we're all, having a challenging time. All of us are having unique challenges for our business. How can we help and support each other and collaborate and get through this together, so that we keep as many people employed, safe, and financially secure as we possibly can. So I guess that would be my ending thought around, just be open, authentic, increase your communication to your staff, to your customers, to your suppliers, to your family.
Sounds great. Very solid advice. I appreciate it, Hugh. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us and hearing some of your thoughts and advice. If you'd like to learn more about Hugh, you can check out his website at hughgyton, GYTON.com. Again, if you'd like to learn more about Align, you can always learn about us at our website, aligntoday.com. And we hope you will join us for our next installment of the Daily Dose of Advice. Till then, thank you so much, and I hope you make it a great day. Thanks, Hugh.
Thanks, Eugene.